Early in the morning of August 15, 2012, a reporter from the Toronto Star, Canada, was walking along the banks of the Credit River on the outskirts of the city to take pictures of the sunrise. As he was walking along the riverbank, he suddenly stopped, struck by a foul odor. This wasn't the usual fishy smell of dead fish, but something very strange and suspicious. Immediately, his mind flashed back to the horrific murder case that had occurred not long ago, the killing and dismemberment of Chinese international student Lin Jun just 3 months earlier. With his keen professional instinct, he sensed something was wrong and decided to investigate further. After searching around for a while, he discovered a gray plastic bag lying on a sandbar by the river. Without a doubt, this bag was the source of that horrific stench. Cautiously, he didn't dare open the bag himself, but immediately called the local police. When they arrived and opened the bag, the police were stunned by the gruesome sight. Inside was a severely decomposed human foot. They immediately mobilized a large force of over 50 officers to cordon off the area and expand the search. Using the location where the first body part was found as the center point, they established a 3-mile-wide search area and meticulously combed through every nook and cranny. Their efforts paid off when by the next afternoon, they successively found another foot, 2 hands, and a human head at different locations in the area. The condition of the body parts was terrible after days soaking in water. They had swollen and decomposed to the point of being barely recognizable, causing even Toronto's most experienced forensic experts to feel dizzy and nauseous. However, with a high sense of responsibility, they quickly regained their composure and continued their important investigative work. Finally, they confirmed that these body parts and the head belonged to the same person. Based on the bone structure and toenail polish, they determined the victim was female, aged 35 to 45. There were over 30 wounds on the victim's head, leading police to conclude this was a homicide. They proceeded to reconstruct the skull for the completely disfigured face. Thanks to this, the victim's identity was quickly established. Her name was Liu Guanhua, 41 years old, an immigrant from Fujian, China. Before the incident, she was running a massage parlor called Forget Me Not in Scarborough, Toronto. Following standard murder investigation procedures, Toronto police began questioning those closest to the victim. The first person on this list was Liu Guanhua, Liu's son. Although initially suspecting the victim's son seemed unreasonable, the investigators couldn't rule out any possibilities. They remembered there had been cases of children killing their parents abroad. Though rare, it wasn't unheard of. Therefore, they thoroughly and impartially interrogated Liu Guanhua. Liu Guanhua was 21 years old this year. He was Liu's son, born in China during her first marriage. After 6 years of marriage, Liu divorced her first husband. 2 years later, she married another man and gave birth to a second son. Perhaps due to extreme poverty, she couldn't afford to pay the fine for having a second child, so she fled in the night with her older son. They escaped from Fujian to Taiwan, then from Taiwan to Thailand. Still feeling unsafe, they then flew to Canada. This woman was truly a woman of determination. As soon as she set foot in Canada, she unhesitatingly tore up her passport and immediately went to the immigration office. There, she put on an emotional performance, sobbing while recounting the sufferings she and her son had endured in China, claims of persecution, unlawful detention, and even brutal beatings. Her acting was so superb that even the immigration officers, who were used to all sorts of heartbreaking stories, were completely convinced. They not only believed her story, but were deeply moved. As a result, Liu was not only granted a priority refugee visa, but also received substantial financial support from the Canadian government. After years of relentless effort, Liu managed to buy a comfortable townhouse and turned it into a steady source of income by renting out some rooms. From a penniless immigrant, she had become a landlady. However, this success seemed to come with a dark side to her character. To maintain the appearance of an attractive single woman, Liu demanded that her son conceal his true identity. She forced him to pretend to be just a regular tenant and absolutely forbade him from calling her mother in front of others. During this period, she dated many men from different cultures and races, creating a diverse and complex network of relationships. Not stopping there, she expanded her business ventures by buying a massage parlor from a fellow Fujian immigrant. It could be said that Liu's life had become extremely rich and colorful. Dong Hao told the police that on the day his mother disappeared, her boyfriend Kenneth Grotsky had come to the house. After that, Liu said she had to go out to discuss business and left the house. Since then, he hadn't seen his mother again. Dong Hao mentioned that his mother had previously had occasions where she didn't come home for a few days, but this time, not long after she left, Kenneth called, frantically saying that his mother had gone missing. This point struck him as very strange. He had then reported it to the police. A week before Liu went missing, her boyfriend Kenneth had reported to the police that on the 30th of the previous month, he and Guanhua had a big fight, after which she had moved out. However, they had remained in contact. Until August 10th, Liu said she had to go out to discuss business, then stopped answering her phone, no matter how many times he called. Kenneth also said that when he couldn't find her, he had contacted her son. This point had been confirmed through the previous interrogation of Dong Hao. With a sense of responsibility, the police decided to go to Kenneth's house to inform him of Liu's death, while also probing to see if this man was hiding anything else. The police knocked on Kenneth's door, but the person who opened it was another man. The police asked in surprise if this was Kenneth's house, to which the man said yes. The police continued to ask who he was, and the handsome man asked back who they were looking for. The police said they were looking for Kenneth, so who was he? The man glanced at the police and said, "I'm his boyfriend." This handsome man's name was Hilbert, and he was Kenneth's official boyfriend. Simply put, Liu's boyfriend also had a boyfriend. He was simultaneously in a relationship with both a boyfriend and a girlfriend, being bisexual. Moreover, these three people were living together. The police asked Hilbert to call Kenneth, who was sleeping in the bedroom. When informed of Liu's death, Kenneth appeared deeply grieved. He hugged Hilbert standing beside him, his eyes red with tears. Hilbert gently patted his back, murmuring, "Don't cry, don't cry." The police went straight to the point and asked, "How did you and Liu meet?" Kenneth took a deep breath and said he met Liu at the massage parlor. Before meeting Liu, he was purely homosexual and had never had a girlfriend. Once, after a fight with his boyfriend, not the handsome one standing here, he was in a terrible mood and accidentally walked into Liu's massage parlor. From the very first glance, Liu recognized something special about Kenneth. With her keen eye and rich experience, she noticed the naivety and lack of experience in this young man's behavior, especially in relationships with women. With her skillful techniques and masterful massage skills, Liu created completely new and surprising experiences for Kenneth. As a result, he quickly became a regular customer of Liu's. He was attracted not only by her massage skills, but also by her personality. Kenneth visited Liu's shop almost daily. It must be said that Liu also had skilled hands, even molding a gay man. But she didn't know that her boyfriend wasn't simply someone who could change his sexual orientation from gay to straight. Therefore, she often argued with Kenneth. After each argument, he would buy many gifts to appease her and help her pay off debts. After a while, Kenneth suggested Liu move in with him, saying his house was spacious and it would be more convenient for work later. Because Liu also wanted to be with this single man, she agreed. Of course, Kenneth's house also had Hilbert. So the three of them lived together in an ambiguous, unclear arrangement. Kenneth said that he had put up the money to help Liu buy the massage parlor, just to help her fulfill her dream of being a business owner. But who would have thought, although Liu was the owner, she only focused on work, refusing to step back. Many times she still directly served customers, often crossing the line between owner and client, and charging extra for special services. Because of this, Liu and Kenneth frequently got into arguments. On July 30th, they argued about this issue again. Liu angrily left. Later, Kenneth went to find Liu, apologizing and giving her a handbag, but he also said he hoped Liu could sell the massage parlor, come home peacefully, and continue living a good life with him and the three of them. Of course, Kenneth was willing to pay her compensation. Liu wasn't stupid either. Seeing how infatuated Kenneth was, she agreed. After all, having a home and someone to support her. Wasn't that wonderful? Kenneth said after they reached an agreement, early the next morning, he and Hilbert drove to Port Hope over 60 miles away to attend a large gathering. At that time, the police didn't fully believe these explanations, but Kenneth provided a clue. On the day Liu disappeared because the massage parlor was about to be sold, she wanted to bring some electrical appliances from the parlor to her boyfriend Jiang Chunqi's house. Kenneth said he had met Jiang Chunqi before, that he wasn't very tall and was a bit thin. He suspected that Liu might have gone to Jiang's house that day and been killed by him. The police suspected Dong Hao suspected Kenneth, now Kenneth suspected Jiang. Step by step, the police were being led around, but what else could they do? It must be known that besides Kenneth and Jiang, Liu was simultaneously involved with many other boyfriends. Faced with such a complex social network of hers, the police were also at a loss. They had to follow Kenneth's line of thinking. After that, they quickly went to Jiang's house to investigate. When faced with the police, he was quite calm. He said he was from Shanghai, 39 years old, and had previously worked as a chef on a Chinese ocean-going ship. On a dark and windy night, when the ship docked in Montreal, he jumped ship while no one was paying attention, with only a piece of bread in his mouth. He then traveled 310 miles to Toronto. Then he began his own performance. Facing the immigration officers, he said in essence that he was a Catholic, cruelly persecuted in China. He quoted a famous saying in Chinese culture, "An army can be stripped of its general, but a man cannot be deprived of his will," emphasizing his steadfastness in faith and ideals. He recounted that he had to save for half a year to have enough money to cross the sea to Canada, demonstrating his determination and sacrifice for his ideals. The immigration officers not only believed his story, but were also deeply moved, to the point of granting him the necessary papers and even awarding him a commendation. Later, he even brought his mother over. And so they settled in Toronto. Jiang said he had met Liu because he rented a house from her. He said at that time Liu had a large black boyfriend, and he himself also had a girlfriend. But Liu frequently seduced him. Over time, they became involved with each other. Not long after, Liu became pregnant. She said Jiang had to quickly take responsibility, and she was willing to break up with her black boyfriend. Jiang Chunqi wasn't stupid either. He only saw the relationship with her as casual fun, but she took it seriously. So he said he couldn't betray his girlfriend. When she heard these words, Liu flew into a rage, slapping him across the face and saying, "Why didn't you say these words when you were enjoying yourself?" Jiang held his face, thinking, "Wasn't it you who seduced me first?" But then he thought, if Liu really gave birth to the child, it would be very troublesome. Immediately, he said sweet words to soothe Liu's mood. Then he took her to New York City, buying her many handbags. Finally, under the power of materialism, Liu agreed to have an abortion. Jiang also immediately promised to treat Liu well in the future. But right after Liu had the abortion, Jiang continued to do as he pleased, treating his promises like the wind. But if you think Liu Guanhua was pitiful, you'd be greatly mistaken. Jiang was just one of her many colorful lovers. At this point, Liu was already living with Kenneth. However, she still didn't end her special relationship with Jiang. To put it bluntly, Liu's attitude towards love was to cast a wide net, harvest plenty, and choose the best to follow. Every time she argued with Kenneth, she would run to Jiang's house for comfort and solace. Later on, Jiang accidentally found out that the man who was always hanging around Liu's house was actually her son. He took advantage of this opportunity, saying that his mother didn't agree to them being together, because Liu was not only married, but also had 2 sons, while he had never been married. His mother said that if they didn't break up, she would cut off their mother-son relationship. Liu took this very seriously, extremely dissatisfied with his mother. On July 30th, Liu had argued with Kenneth. After moving out, she immediately moved in with Jiang. He said she could stay, but had to leave on weekends, because his mother worked as a housekeeper for someone else and usually came home on weekends. Speaking of this, Jiang mysteriously revealed that on the evening Liu disappeared, they had just finished dinner, and he had driven Liu back to the massage parlor. Then, he saw with his own eyes her getting into Kenneth's car and leaving. He told the police that he hadn't seen Liu since then. He suspected that Kenneth had killed Liu. The police silently looked at the man named Jiang Chunqi in front of them. It must be said that just looking at his face, he didn't seem like a good person. Because Kenneth had a solid alibi, he was attending a gathering at Port Hope with his boyfriend Hilbert, with many people who could testify. Now he was saying he saw Kenneth drive Liu away, which was clearly impossible. So he was lying. At this point, the police had noticed a wound on Jiang's forehead and asked where it came from. He suddenly became flustered, saying he had bumped into something while moving things. But the police knew well that such a long wound was clearly a knife cut. Seeing that Jiang was constantly lying, the police checked the surveillance cameras nearby. The footage showed that on the day Liu disappeared, she had gone into Jiang's house and never came out again. Until the next afternoon, Jiang had stuffed a very large suitcase into his car trunk. But when he returned, he didn't bring the suitcase down. Clearly, Jiang was highly suspicious of criminal behavior. However, the police didn't immediately investigate but only assigned someone to secretly monitor his house. You might wonder, now that the person is dead and Jiang is so heavily suspected, why not arrest him immediately? Why wait any longer? Sure enough, not long after the police first visited the house, Jiang and his mother thoroughly washed the car inside and out several times. After the person in charge of surveillance reported this situation, the police were furious. It seemed they were trying to destroy evidence. Therefore, the police hurriedly applied for a search warrant. After the police entered Jiang's house, they vaguely smelled an unpleasant odor. Finally, they checked the entrance to the basement. Yes, that unpleasant smell was coming from here. Very quickly, the police discovered a part of the floor had been demolished and replaced with tiles that were very out of place. After lifting the tiles and checking with fluorescent reagent, the results showed that there had been a large amount of blood here. In addition, they found a blood-stained glove in a drawer in the room. Not only that, at Jiang's house, they also found gray plastic bags identical to those used at the scene where the body was dumped. There were blood splatters on the wardrobe, and traces of the victim's DNA were also found in the car trunk. Although the police reacted slowly, their techniques were still very sophisticated. No matter how he washed, they still found important evidence. With this evidence, the police immediately arrested Jiang and charged him with first-degree murder. However, the police still allowed Jiang's mother to stay at the house and did not seal off the crime scene. On September 3rd, someone discovered a suitcase in Lake Ontario. When opened, it contained a body with only the torso remaining. After examination, it was confirmed to be Liu Guanhua. Moreover, the style and color of the suitcase were identical to the one Jiang had taken away. Now, with all this evidence, could they directly convict him? Actually, no, because the most important murder weapon still hadn't been found. You can't directly prove who killed the person. The existing evidence couldn't form a complete chain of evidence. Sure enough, Jiang refused to confess. He said, "The evidence you found can only prove that a person died in my house, but it doesn't mean I killed her. After all, I'm innocent." Faced with this dilemma, the police were also at a loss about what to do. Before they could resolve this issue, another problem arose. On September 9th, Jiang's neighbors reported to the police that they smelled an unpleasant odor coming from his house. They had knocked on the door to complain, but no one answered. The police immediately went to his house and discovered that his mother had been dead for a long time. After the coroner's examination, the cause of death was determined to be sudden death due to heart disease. When Jiang heard the news of his mother's death, he requested temporary release to handle the funeral arrangements. After dealing with everything, he would return to jail and voluntarily provide a full confession. At that time, the prosecutor was quite pleased, thinking they could finally close this case. However, they had underestimated Jiang Chunqi. Facing the investigator, Jiang said, "At this point, I won't hide anything anymore. Actually, Liu Guanhua was killed by my mother." The prosecutor was stunned, not understanding what was happening. Jiang Chunqi took a sip of water and slowly recounted. He said his mother had always disliked Liu because she had been married twice, had children from previous relationships, lived indecently, and worked in the impure massage business. On the day of the incident, they were having dinner when his mother unexpectedly came home early. The two women started arguing. Liu cursed at his mother, calling her old and unreasonable, unable to distinguish right from wrong. His mother also cursed Liu, calling her depraved, shameless, and accusing her of stealing. Of course, this theft accusation was fabricated. It's unclear if it was true or not. Anyway, his mother had an expensive piece of jewelry that really went missing, and she believed Liu had stolen it. Jiang said their argument became increasingly fierce. His mother went to the kitchen and grabbed a cleaver, saying she wanted to kill Liu. He rushed in to stop them and accidentally got injured on his forehead. Then he went to the bathroom to treat his wound. When he came back, he saw Liu lying on the floor, with his mother sitting on top of her, still hacking away. After a few minutes, his mother came to her senses and asked, "Son, I've killed someone. What should we do now?" Jiang told the police, "What else could I do? How could I report my own mother to the police? She's already so old." After thinking for a while, they decided to dismember the body and dispose of it. They put the limbs, torso, and head into garbage bags and drove to dump them in different locations. All right, now the culprit has become Jiang's mother, but they couldn't convict based on one-sided testimony. Therefore, they conducted an investigation based on Jiang's statement and the autopsy of his mother. The coroner said she had severe heart disease, and there were many related medications in the house. Mr. Xi, the employer who had hired Jiang's mother, also stated that she was a quiet person, hard-working but in poor health. At this point, the police suspected Jiang Chunqi was lying. How could a 70-year-old woman overpower a 40-year-old woman and hack at her frantically? Even if she had initially struck Liu, why didn't Liu fight back? Did she just lie there and let herself be stabbed over 30 times? The more the police thought about it, the more they felt Jiang was fabricating. But perhaps he himself also felt his words were not credible, so on the third day of the trial, he suddenly changed his testimony. At that time, after I finished treating my wound and came out, I saw Liu already dead on the floor. My mother was just hacking at her corpse to vent her anger. The judge asked him how Liu died then, and Jiang stammered, "I wonder about that too. How did she suddenly die? Who killed her?" The judge was so angry he didn't know what to say, thinking to himself how he had encountered such a scoundrel. The judge continued to ask, "So why did you lie before and say your mother was the killer?" Jiang Chunqi replied, "Why should I tell you? I'll speak if I want to, and if I don't want to, I won't. That's my right." Hearing these words, the whole courtroom suddenly became noisy. Everyone wanted to rush up and slap him a few times. Even his own lawyer couldn't stand it, signaling him to be quiet. Then the lawyer collected his thoughts and said, "Actually, this is very simple. My client's mother, out of love for her son, seeing her son injured by Liu during the intervention, instantly transformed into a superhuman and took down Liu in the blink of an eye. After all, anything can happen in this world. Human potential is limitless." After hearing the defense lawyer's argument, the jury members felt like they had thousands of galloping horses with nowhere to run. They even wanted to beat up this lawyer. The judge saw the situation was getting out of hand, banged his gavel and shouted, "Silence! Silence! Stop arguing. We must use evidence to speak." At this point, the prosecutor said, "You want evidence? All right." Then, he took out the forensic examination report from his briefcase and read aloud to everyone. There are 19 defensive wounds on the victim Liu Guanhua's arms. This shows that when the attacker struck, the victim was still alive. Moreover, there are over 30 knife wounds on the victim's head, all cuts from top to bottom. This indicates that the attacker was taller and physically stronger than the victim. I want to ask the defense lawyer, does Jiang's mother fit these characteristics? At this moment, the defense lawyer's face turned red, then pale, unable to say a word. Next, the prosecutor pointed at Jiang and said, "You had a relationship with Liu. If not love, then at least friendship. Yet you killed her, and dismembered her body. This is an inhuman act. After killing her, you showed no remorse even trying to frame Kenneth, intentionally misleading the police and falsely accusing others. This is an unjust act. Over 10 years ago, you left your homeland, and for the sake of permanent residency, you didn't hesitate to fabricate lies and slander your motherland. This is an act of disloyalty. After your mother died of illness, you immediately blamed all the crimes on her, turning right and wrong upside down, reversing the situation. This is an act of filial impiety. Being such an inhuman, unjust, disloyal, and unfilial person, you still shamelessly stand here speaking nonsense. Your Honor, I propose to immediately convict Jiang of first-degree murder, sentence him to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole courtroom erupted in applause. However, Canada is still a country ruled by law. To convict him of first-degree murder was almost impossible, because after all, the murder weapon still hadn't been found. Moreover, no clues were found on the victim's body that could directly prove Jiang was the killer, unless he confessed himself. Faced with such a complex and messy love story, the judge decided to adjourn the trial for 3 days. 3 days later, after the jury members delivered their verdict, they believed that Jiang Chunqi's act of dismembering and disposing of the body was premeditated. Based on the available evidence, the charge of second-degree murder against the defendant was established. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole for the first 18 years. The case of Jiang Chunqi is not just a story about crime, but also a painful portrait of moral decay and complex human relationships in modern society. This case will haunt Toronto for a long time, as a painful warning about what can happen when people lose their humanity. It's also a reminder that, no matter the circumstances, we must maintain our conscience and morality. And that's the story for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.